Hello everyone, my name is Martin Medeiros and I'll be going over the latest employment statistics that came out last Friday from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it covered the month of July 2020. Now I know what's in the news, but what's in the news is basically inflation and are we in a recession? Now unfortunately, this report didn't really help us answer the question, are we in a recession? It did shed some light in terms of inflation. So let's get into the statistics. So what I have open here is the kind of a brief overview of the statistics that have come out. And the first one up is payroll employment, non-farm payroll employment. Now this is by far the most important statistic that comes out of the employment report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It basically tells you how many jobs on net were created in a month. Now it's very difficult to look at this graph because the scale is all messed up because of the pandemic recession right here. Excuse me. Now, as you can see, in 1 month, I believe it was July, the U.S. economy lost 20 million jobs in 1 month, and that blew out this y-axis scale. But you can see the following month we gained back about 5 million jobs, and overall, since the pandemic, we've gained back all of the jobs we have lost. So that's good news. Now, what's very difficult to see is the last month right here was 528,000 jobs in 1 month. Now that's a huge number. That's much greater than the consensus, which was just a little bit over 200,000 jobs. So in other words, economists were expecting a little over 200,000 jobs, and it was over double that. That's a big surprise, and it is completely unprecedented for us to have this job creation in 1 month during a recession, because the last two reported quarters, Q1 and Q2 of 2022, were reported to have negative GDP growth. Now, the unofficial down and dirty definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Now, that's usually done for convenience, that type of definition. The National Bureau of Economic Research, they're the ones who basically study recessions and tell us when a recession starts and when it stops. They don't use that particular definition, and there's a lot of data that's out there that basically contradicts what GDP is telling us. And this report does that too, because you wouldn't see this type of job numbers during a recession. Now, I'm going to get into that in a second, but let's look at some of the other statistics that we see here. The unemployment rate. Now, the unemployment rate came in at, where is it right here, for July, 3.5%. Now, that's very low. That's down from the previous month from 3.6. Again, you don't expect the unemployment rate to drop during a recession. And then the other big statistics that came out is employment earning, average hourly earnings. Now that came out at a respectable over 5%, so greater than 5% increase in a month. Now this is a bit worrying for inflation, because the theory goes, as labor costs increase, it tends to put pressure on businesses to raise prices to cover those higher labor costs. Another thing to consider is that even though wages are going up by 5%, which is great, inflation is increasing more than that, which means that even though you're getting a 5% increase in your wages, let's say, you're not going to be able to buy as many goods and services because prices are rising even higher. Now the good news is there are signs that inflation is coming down. So that's good news. Now what I want to do is I want to zoom in on some of the statistics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some pictures here. What I want you to do is I want to show you the latest data. So this is the latest data right here. Let me get rid of this. Now this shows the data that we just looked at, but in a zoomed in format, so you could actually see the data more clearly. Now let me bring up my annotation tool. Get rid of this now. Now, so let me bring up a little red thing here. So you can see here, this is the latest data. That's 528,000 jobs created. And what we see here is the recession, in theory, started in January, right? So that means from this point right here to where we are presently, this is a state of recession, if we are to believe the data that are coming out from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the BEA. But look at the job growth. These are all positive figures. If you look at these numbers in total, that adds up to 3.3 million jobs that were created during a recession. This has never happened before. Sometimes you get one or two positive job numbers in a month at the start of a recession, then it quickly goes negative. And to show you, let me first erase all of this stuff. Let me get all of this stuff, and let me bring up some other data. So this is going to be, this is showing you employment data during the last two recessions. See these gray lines right here? Let me just bring in my nice trusty little pen. This edge of the gray line, a gray bar, and this edge of the gray bar, that's the recession that happened during 2008, the financial crisis. This side of the gray bar and this side of the gray bar, that's the recession that happened in 2001, the dot-com bubble bursting. And so let me just get rid of this. These little lines right here. Now, what this is showing you, look at the job data. Those bars that you see there, these are the jobs that were created. Now look at the start of the recession right here. Notice how we have 1 month, the first month, had positive job growth of about 100,000 jobs in that month. But then they quickly go negative, quite significantly. Look at the dot-com bubble. We don't have any positive job numbers during the recession. So again, we've had positive job numbers for every single month since the start of this so-called recession, since January. Let's take a look at another snapshot. So these are the recessions. This is showing the recession of 1991. And you can see here there are no positive job creation numbers during this recession. Now over here, going back way to the early part of the 1980s, we do see one positive job number, and the rest are negative. Again, so we went back 4 recessions, and we've never had sustained, not just sustained, strong job growth during a recession. So this is probably the main argument against the notion that we are in a recession. Something is wrong with the GDP data, at least when you look at the numbers coming from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So either the job numbers are wrong or the GDP numbers are wrong. Something is amiss, and this is why it's not clear cut as to where we are when it comes to the recession. Now for inflation, the hourly earnings numbers does make the case that we still have to fight the inflation and cool down the economy to bring down inflation. Now, there are other factors involved in inflation. There are supply chain factors. The war in Ukraine is having a big impact on energy prices. COVID lockdowns in China is having a big impact in free flow of goods in and out of China, which is impacting our supply chain. So there are things that are impacting inflation other than strong demand. But again, it is really strange to talk about cooling down the economy during a recession. If we were in a recession, we would talk about speeding up the economy. So if you're confused about what direction the economy is going, you're not alone. People who watch the economy as a profession are also confused. So hopefully I've answered more questions than I've created, but I look forward to your comments below, and that's all for now.